The galaxy had lived in peace for 9 centuries. A treaty, older than most civilizations, bound the humans and the Galactic Empire together. It was called the Treaty of Alaris. For 900 years, no human ship had fired upon an Imperial vessel, and no Imperial soldier had walked upon human soil without permission. The peace was fragile yet strong because it depended on trust and respect. And for that trust, one woman had given her life to protect it. General Han Mira was the symbol of that peace. She was not the tallest or the strongest, but she carried herself with confidence and quiet power. Her eyes were dark and steady, her voice calm yet firm. She could speak to the most aggressive alien generals and make them pause. She could speak to her soldiers and make them fight with honor. She had spent decades studying strategy, diplomacy, and human nature. Mira understood that the greatest victories were sometimes won without firing a shot. Her aide, Captain Li Doyen, admired her more than anyone else. Doyen had served under her for 12 years. He had seen her negotiate with the most cunning politicians, face assassins, and endure betrayals without ever losing her focus. To him, she was not only a leader, but a shield for humanity. The stars outside the command ship window were calm that morning. Mira stood silently, looking at the endless black. She remembered the stories her mother had told her as a child. Stories of brave humans who had survived wars, plagues, and invasions. Humanity had always been underestimated. Mira thought of those stories often. They reminded her that humans were not fragile. They were strong in ways no one else understood. She turned to Doyen. "The Emperor expects me today. He will try to test our patience." Doyen nodded. "I know, but we have the treaty. They will not dare to harm you in public." Mira smiled faintly, but it did not reach her eyes. "Doyen, sometimes trust can be dangerous. Never forget that." The ship descended into the capital planet of the Empire, Karnus Prime. Its skies were filled with floating towers and ships moving in precise formation. The humans had been allowed entry, but everything was watched. Cameras recorded every step. Every word spoken would be analyzed. Mira walked with her head high, her uniform clean, her medals gleaming under the artificial light. The main hall was immense. Aliens from dozens of species filled the room. Some looked like walking plants, others like floating orbs of light, and some had scales and horns. Mira had learned to respect all of them, even if they did not respect her back. At the center of the hall, the Emperor of the Galactic Empire sat upon a throne carved from black metal and crystal. His expression was unreadable. He had ruled for centuries, yet he looked young, as if time touched him differently. Mira approached him slowly, flanked by her guards. "General Mira," the Emperor said, his voice echoing across the hall. "It has been many years since the humans first signed the treaty. Tell me, do you believe your people deserve this peace?" Mira met his eyes without fear. "Peace is not about deserving, Your Majesty. It is about choosing it. Humans have always chosen it when given the chance. We have honored the treaty for 900 years. That is proof enough." The Emperor leaned back. "Proof is only as strong as those who obey it. And obedience can be bought or broken." Mira did not flinch. She had expected threats. What she had not expected were the whispers from the surrounding halls. Soldiers shifting, fingers twitching toward their weapons. Her stomach tightened slightly. Doyen's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his side weapon. "Stay calm," he whispered. Mira nodded. "I am calm." They began the formal negotiations. Mira spoke of colonies that needed protection, trade routes that needed to remain open, and pirates that threatened both human and Imperial shipping. The Emperor nodded occasionally, but his eyes were cold. Every word Mira said was met with silence or subtle dismissals. Then came the announcement. An Imperial soldier moved forward. Mira barely had time to react before the flash of light. A plasma round fired in public struck her in the chest. The hall erupted into chaos. Aliens screamed, soldiers drew weapons, and Doyen lunged forward, catching her before she fell. Her uniform was burned and stained with blood. She gasped, struggling to remain conscious. Doyen carried her backward. "Stay with me, General." "You cannot die here." Mira's fingers clenched his arm. "Doyen, the treaty." "The people." "Forget the treaty for now," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "We will make them pay for this." The Emperor did not flinch. His face remained calm, almost amused. "You trusted us too much," he said simply. "That is your mistake." Back on the ship, Mira was stabilized, but she was badly wounded. Doyen refused to leave her side. Medical officers worked quickly. But Mira's mind was already racing. The attack was not just an act of violence. It was a declaration of war. The humans had endured 900 years of peace, and in that time, they had grown patient and disciplined. But patience had limits. Humanity would not forgive an act so bold, so cruel. The word spread quickly. Across the human systems, messages flew faster than any ship. The Emperor had shot the woman who had kept peace for centuries. Every human heart felt the betrayal. Every fleet commander knew what it meant. Doyen made the first official declaration. All human ships are to prepare for war. The 900-year peace is over. We strike only for justice, and we strike with the full power of humanity. Admirals and captains across the galaxy obeyed without hesitation. Ships that had been docked for decades were readied. Weapons long unused were tested. Humans did not hesitate. They were not bloodthirsty, but they were dangerous. They were united. Meanwhile, Mira recovered slowly, but she could not remain idle. She studied reports of Imperial movements, analyzed defenses, and guided Doyen in planning retaliation. Her sharp mind, even weakened by injury, became a beacon of strategy. In secret, Doyen gathered those closest to Mira, Admiral Park Hyerin, Commander Kim Sora, and several other leaders who had trained under Mira joined the meeting. She survived because of us, Hyerin said. Her voice was low but fierce. Now it is our turn to show the Empire the price of their crime. Mira's lips curled into a faint smile. We fight not for revenge, she whispered, but for justice. Remember that. Outside, the stars continued to shine. The galaxy, once peaceful and orderly, felt the first tremors of a storm. A storm born from betrayal, from anger, and from the unstoppable force of humanity. Mira looked at the stars and thought of the stories her mother had told. She knew humanity was underestimated, but that was the very reason they would win. Strength was not always shown in size or weapons. Sometimes it was shown in courage, unity, and the refusal to bow before injustice. The galaxy would soon learn that lesson. The sound of alarms echoed across the human fleet as Captain Lee Doyen's orders reached every ship. Humanity's fleet, once quiet and patient, moved with precision and purpose. Every commander knew what had happened. The Emperor had broken the trust of 900 years. The woman who had kept peace, General Han Mira, had been shot in cold blood. Now, humans would act. Not out of hatred, but out of justice. Mira, still recovering from her wound, observed the preparations from the command deck of the flagship Dahan. She could feel the energy building in every ship. Soldiers who had trained for years were now fully awake to the gravity of their mission. Even those who had never fought before were ready. She understood that war was not just about machines or weapons. It was about the people who wielded them. Doyen stood beside her, his face hard and determined. We must strike carefully, he said. The Empire is strong, but they will be slower than we are. Our advantage is our speed and unity. Mira nodded. We cannot waste this chance. The Empire thinks humans are slow, patient, and weak. We will show them that patience can be deadly. Across the galaxy, news of the assassination spread like wildfire. Colonies that had long been loyal to the Empire began to hesitate. The human message was clear. They would retaliate, and they would not stop until justice was served. Merchant planets, neutral worlds, and even some former enemies started to reconsider their loyalties. Humans had awakened, and everyone could feel it. The first strike was carefully planned. Admiral Park Hyerin, Mira's former student, led a fleet of stealth ships. They moved through uncharted space, bypassing Imperial sensors, and struck a small Imperial station near the border. The attack was swift. Weapon systems that had been silent for decades roared to life. The station's defenses collapsed under precise strikes. Hyerin communicated the result back to Dahan. The first target is down. No human ship lost. The Empire will feel the shock of our speed. Doyen allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. Good. This is only the beginning. The Empire will not recover quickly. Meanwhile, the Empire scrambled to respond. Soldiers ran to their posts, generals shouted orders, and fleets moved into formation. They were confident in their strength. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries. They had conquered planets and enslaved species. They believed humans would hesitate as they always had before. But this time was different. Mira, though weakened, was already calculating. She studied maps, fleet positions, and Imperial supply lines. Every move she made was meant to exploit the arrogance of the Empire. She instructed Doyen on which systems to attack first, which supply routes to cut, and which colonies to protect. Humans were not reckless. They were precise. Every strike was designed to cripple the Empire without wasting unnecessary lives. The second attack came within days. Humans hit an Imperial shipyard on the outer rim. The Empire had believed it was safe, protected by multiple defense layers. But Mira had anticipated their confidence. With cloaked fighters and long-range missiles, the humans destroyed the yard, sending massive debris into orbit. Thousands of Imperial ships were trapped and disabled. Reports of these attacks spread quickly. The Empire could not hide the destruction. Alien species that had served them began to whisper about human strength. Some ships even surrendered rather than face the relentless precision of the humans. The galaxy was beginning to see what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. Back on the flagship, Mira walked through the corridors. Soldiers bowed as she passed. Even in pain, she gave encouragement and advice. "Do not let anger cloud your judgment," she told them. "Fight with your mind and your heart. Remember, we fight for justice, not revenge." Her words inspired the fleet. Soldiers who had feared combat now moved with confidence. Engineers who had doubted their abilities found new strength. The human spirit, long underestimated, was now the greatest weapon of all. Imperial commanders tried to organize a counterattack. They gathered fleets, called for reinforcements, and tried to predict human strategies. But Mira had already anticipated their every move. Her knowledge of human psychology and the Empire's arrogance gave her an edge no computer or general could match. Humans struck first, retreated, and struck again in patterns that confused and terrified the enemy. In the midst of the chaos, Doyun received a message from an Imperial envoy. It was simple, almost pleading. "Stop this now. Your general is injured. You can still negotiate. Do not destroy more of us," Doyun read it aloud to Mira. She looked at him, her eyes sharp despite her exhaustion. "They still do not understand. They think mercy will save them. But mercy is not given to those who kill without reason. We act because we must, not because we desire it." The fleet moved to a critical location, the communication hub of the Empire. This hub controlled information across dozens of star systems. Destroying it would cripple the Empire's ability to coordinate. Mira and Doyun studied the schematics. The hub was heavily defended, with turrets, shields, and fighter patrols. But the humans had learned patience and precision. They would strike at the right moment, higher, and led the assault. Her fleet dodged patrols, disabled defense systems, and deployed boarding teams. In hours, the hub was under human control. Messages of surrender, distress, and confusion spread across Imperial lines. Humanity was no longer a distant threat. They were here, and they were unstoppable. As the fleet regrouped, Mira addressed her officers. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The Empire will recover some power, but humans fight with more than weapons. We fight with courage, unity, and intelligence. They cannot match what we have." Doyun could see the fire in her eyes. Even weakened, she radiated strength. The soldiers felt it too. They would follow her into any battle, and they would not fail. The Empire tried to retaliate with a massive fleet near a border system. They assumed humans would respond cautiously. Instead, Mira ordered a bold attack. Using a combination of decoys, stealth fighters, and long-range strikes, humans destroyed a quarter of the Imperial fleet in a single engagement. The survivors were forced to retreat, their pride shattered. Every victory strengthened human morale. Colonies that had been hesitant now pledged full support. Engineers, scientists, and civilians all contributed to the war effort. The humans were no longer just soldiers. They were a unified force, every person part of the fight for justice. Amid the victories, Mira reflected on the cost. Lives had been lost, ships destroyed, and colonies threatened. War was never clean, but the Empire had started it. They had broken the trust of 900 years. Humanity would respond with calculated fury, not mindless revenge. Doyun stood beside her as they watched the stars. "Do you think the Empire will understand?" he asked quietly. Mira shook her head. "No, they never do. That is why we must act. Humans are not cruel, but we are just. They will learn soon enough." As the human fleet moved deeper into Imperial space, systems that had been quiet for centuries erupted in activity. Communication hubs transmitted news of human victories. Soldiers cheered, engineers worked tirelessly, and civilians provided supplies. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. Now they were waking a force that would not be ignored. Mira rested for a moment, her hand on her side where the plasma shot had burned her. She thought of the Treaty of Alaris, of the peace that had lasted 900 years. The Empire had ended it with a single act of violence, and now humanity would show that peace taken by betrayal demanded a response. The stars shone brightly outside the window. Each light represented a system, a people, and a future. Mira knew the fight ahead would be long and hard, but humans had endured worse. They had survived plagues, wars, and betrayal, and they would survive this. With Doyun at her side and the fleet ready to strike, Mira whispered to herself, "Let them see what humans can do. Let them feel the cost of their arrogance." The galaxy was about to change forever. The Empire would soon realize that the patience of humans was not weakness but a weapon, and once awakened, that weapon could not be stopped. Humanity's fury spread through the stars like a wildfire. Every ship in the human fleet moved with purpose, striking Imperial positions with precision and power. General Han Mira, though still recovering from her wound, coordinated the attacks from the flagship Dahan. Her mind worked faster than any computer, predicting enemy movements, preparing strategies, and guiding her people. Humans had awakened, and now every action they took reminded the galaxy why they had been underestimated for centuries. Captain Lee Doyen watched as ships engaged Imperial forces near the Veil Nebula. The battle was fierce, but the humans fought with a calm ferocity. Their weapons struck with precision, their shields absorbed attacks, and their fighters moved in patterns designed to confuse and overwhelm the enemy. Every strike was calculated, every move purposeful. Doyen could see the fear spreading through the Imperial ranks. For the first time, the Empire realized that humans did not retreat. Humans did not surrender. Humans struck back, and they struck with justice. Admiral Park Hyerin led one fleet toward an Imperial supply station hidden near a cluster of asteroids. The station had long been thought secure, protected by turrets, shields, and patrols. But humans had learned patience and cunning. Hyerin's fleet approached in silence, cloaking their ships and bypassing sensors. Then, with coordinated precision, they launched a strike that disabled the station's weapons and communications. Explosions lit the asteroid field, and debris floated in silence through the cold void. The humans had achieved victory without losing a single ship. Commander Kim Sora, another of Mira's former students, led the ground forces in a parallel strike. Using transport pods and stealth technology, human soldiers boarded enemy installations and disabled their defenses. They moved quickly, efficiently, and without hesitation. Every move was guided by Mira's strategy. She had taught them that battles were not just about strength, they were about intelligence, planning, and unity. Across human-controlled systems, the news of victories spread like fire. Colonies that had once feared the Empire now rallied to humanity's side. Merchants, engineers, and civilians contributed to the war effort. Humans had become a single, unstoppable force. Every person, ship, and weapon moved toward one goal: to punish the Empire for breaking the 900-year peace. In the midst of these operations, Mira and Doyen studied reports from across the galaxy. Every victory, every surrender, every retreat added to their understanding of the Empire. Humans were not reckless. They did not act out of anger or vengeance. Every strike was meant to weaken the enemy, protect human colonies, and send a message. Betrayal would not go unanswered. The Empire, meanwhile, scrambled to respond. They had never faced a threat like this. Generals and admirals tried to organize fleets and fortify planets, but they could not predict the human strategies. Humans were unpredictable yet precise. They struck where the Empire felt safe, attacked when least expected, and disappeared before the enemy could react. Every failure left Imperial leaders more desperate and fearful. Mira studied the maps of Imperial territories. She identified critical systems that controlled communications, supplies, and reinforcements. Every attack was timed to disrupt the Empire's ability to coordinate. She guided Doyen in targeting these systems first, ensuring that the humans always had the advantage. "Control the information," she said quietly, "and you control the battle before it begins." One of the most daring attacks came at the Imperial outpost on the edge of the Orion sector. The outpost controlled key supply lines, and the Empire believed it was nearly impossible to capture. Mira's plan involved coordinated attacks from space and ground forces simultaneously. Cloaked ships disabled turrets while boarding teams infiltrated the command center. Within hours, the outpost fell. Imperial soldiers surrendered in shock and confusion. Humans had proven once again that their patience and planning were more dangerous than brute force. As the fleet celebrated the victory, Mira walked through the corridors of Dahan. Soldiers and officers bowed as she passed, but she smiled faintly. Victory is only meaningful if we do not lose our purpose, she reminded them. We fight for justice. Never forget that. Doyen watched her, impressed by her calm strength. Even though she had been shot in the summit, she radiated confidence. She was the symbol of humanity's resilience. Humans did not need to fear the Empire. They needed only to believe in themselves. In the next days, humans pushed deeper into Imperial territory. Small fleets guided by Mira's strategy disrupted supply lines, attacked shipyards, and captured communication hubs. Each operation was designed to weaken the Empire without unnecessary loss of life. Humans had learned from history that survival was the goal, but this time survival was tied to justice. The Empire had made the first act of betrayal, and humans would respond in kind. Imperial fleets tried to mount counterattacks, but humans anticipated every move. Using decoys, electronic warfare, and tactical maneuvers, the humans destroyed a significant portion of the Imperial Navy in space battles that lasted for hours. The survivors retreated to fortified systems, terrified and demoralized. The galaxy watched in awe. Humans, long underestimated, were proving to be the most dangerous force in the stars. Amid the battles, Mira remained the heart of the fleet. She studied intelligence reports, planned new operations, and gave guidance to every commander. Her presence inspired courage in every human soldier, engineer, and officer. They had seen the woman who had kept peace for centuries shot in public, yet she survived. If she could endure and lead, then humans could endure and fight. Doyen worked tirelessly alongside her. He coordinated attacks, ensured supplies reached every ship, and maintained communication with human colonies. He knew that the battle was not just in space. It was also in the minds of every human and alien who watched the war unfold. Humanity had awakened, and their reputation for patience and diplomacy had been replaced with one of power and precision. One of the most important victories came at the Imperial Communication Hub in the Shinar cluster. This hub controlled messages across dozens of systems. Humans, under Mira's guidance, launched a precise assault. Cloaked fighters disabled defense systems while boarding teams infiltrated and seized control. Within hours, the hub was in human hands. Imperial fleets were thrown into confusion. Commands were delayed, supply chains disrupted, and soldiers panicked. Humanity had shown that even the most secure Imperial installations were vulnerable. As the fleet regrouped after this victory, Mira addressed her officers. "The Empire is not defeated yet," she said. "They are strong and they will fight back. But they are no longer in control. We have taken the first steps. Each victory is a lesson to them. They will learn the cost of betrayal." Doyen could see the fire in Mira's eyes. Even weakened by her wound, she radiated determination and wisdom. She was more than a general. She was the embodiment of humanity's strength. Soldiers felt her presence as a shield, a guiding force, and an inspiration. They followed her because they believed in her, and because they knew that with her, humanity could never fail. Across human-controlled systems, colonies and planets pledged support. Engineers repaired ships, scientists developed new weapons, and civilians contributed to the war effort. Humans were no longer simply soldiers, they were a united force, every person part of the fight for justice. The Empire had begun the war, but humans now controlled its course. Mira took a moment to look out the window at the stars. Each light represented a system, a people, and a future. She thought of the Treaty of Alaris, of the 900 years of peace that had been broken by the Empire's arrogance. Now humans would make sure that betrayal carried consequences. Doyen stood beside her. "Do you think they understand what humans are capable of?" he asked quietly. Mira shook her head. "No, they never do. They will learn soon enough. Humanity does not fight without purpose. And now our purpose is clear." The fleet moved deeper into Imperial territory. Battles continued across multiple fronts, and the Empire struggled to adapt. Systems that had been secure for centuries now fell to humans. Soldiers surrendered, planets declared support for humanity, and the galaxy began to understand the true strength of a species that had long been underestimated. Mira whispered to herself, watching the stars. "Let them see what humans can do. Let them understand the cost of arrogance. Let them learn that patience is not weakness." The galaxy was changing. Humanity had awakened. The Empire had ignited a storm, and now that storm could not be stopped. The Imperial capital, Karnus Prime, was a planet of shining towers, Gleaming streets and endless fleets. From orbit it looked peaceful, almost serene. But beneath the surface, panic spread through the Empire's command. Humans were advancing faster than they could respond. Systems that had been secure for centuries now fell one by one. Ships that had once patrolled the borders confidently were destroyed or captured. The Empire had underestimated the strength of humanity, and now their arrogance had brought chaos to their doorstep. General Han Mira observed the planet from the bridge of the flagship Daehan. Even as she recovered from her injury, her mind was sharper than ever. She studied the maps of Imperial defenses, noted the positions of fleets, and predicted their likely moves. Every Imperial general she had faced had pride in their knowledge, but none had considered human patience as a weapon. Mira smiled faintly. "They do not understand us," she whispered to Captain Li Doyen. "That is why they will fail." Doyen stood beside her, eyes fixed on the holographic display of Imperial positions. "Their strongest fleets are here," he said. "They have concentrated their forces. If we attack now, the battle will be dangerous." Mira's eyes narrowed. Danger is never an excuse for hesitation. "Humans do not fight without reason. We fight for justice. That is our strength." The fleet moved into position. Cloaked reconnaissance ships slipped past Imperial patrols, gathering information and identifying weak points. Mira had decided on a bold approach: simultaneous strikes from space and ground forces. The Empire had relied on their planet-killer weapons and fortified positions for centuries, believing them invincible. They had never faced humans who would strike both above and below, using intelligence and precision rather than brute force. Admiral Park Hyren led the space assault. Her ships darted between towers and planetary defenses, disabling turrets, shields, and communication arrays. Each strike was precise, each move calculated to minimize human losses while maximizing Imperial confusion. Drones followed behind, repairing damage and providing reconnaissance for the next strike. Within hours, critical orbital defenses were disabled. On the surface, Commander Kim Sora led ground troops through the streets of Karnas Prime. The Imperial army was well trained, but it was disoriented. Humans struck with speed using tactics no one had expected. Soldiers moved through the streets silently, disabling security systems and capturing command centers. Civilians, though afraid at first, began to support the humans when they realized the Empire's propaganda was false. Mira's strategy worked not just because of strength, but because of understanding the minds of those she faced. Doyen coordinated the movements from orbit, ensuring that space and ground forces acted in perfect synchronization. Messages were sent instantly across secure channels. Every strike, every maneuver was part of a greater plan. Humans were no longer reacting to the Empire. They were controlling the flow of battle. Within the Emperor's palace, panic spread. Advisors and generals shouted commands, but they were too slow. Communication lines were cut, and the humans' precise strikes had thrown the entire system into disarray. Soldiers retreated from positions they had believed to be secure. The Emperor himself moved from room to room, trying to understand what had gone wrong. He had expected hesitation, fear, and mistakes from the humans. Instead, he saw a disciplined, united force, striking with intelligence and courage. Mira observed from orbit, her hand resting lightly on her side where the plasma shot had struck her. Even in pain, she remained calm. She spoke to her officers through secure channels. Do not let them regroup. Every moment of hesitation gives them a chance to recover. Strike with precision, strike with purpose, and remember that we fight for justice, not revenge. The humans moved with speed. They captured communication hubs, disabled weapons, and cut supply lines. The Empire's soldiers for the first time felt fear, not the fear of dying, but the fear of being outmatched by a species they had believed weak. The humans were not reckless, they were unstoppable. As the battle raged, the Emperor made a final attempt. He activated planet-killer weapons, massive machines designed to destroy entire cities with a single shot. He believed that humans would panic, that their fleets would scatter. But Mira had anticipated this. Human engineers hacked the weapons before they could fire, turning the massive machines back upon Imperial strongholds. Explosions shook the planet as city after city was destroyed, not by human hands but by the Empire's own arrogance. Doyen's voice crackled over the comms. The planet killers are under control. Imperial fleets are retreating. They cannot stop us, Mira nodded silently. She knew the Empire had underestimated human patience. human intelligence and human unity. These were the true weapons of humanity, and now the galaxy was witnessing them in full force. By the time humans entered the Emperor's palace, the Imperial forces were in chaos. Soldiers surrendered rather than fight, and generals fled. Mira's strategy had avoided unnecessary deaths, focusing on disabling and capturing rather than killing. Even in victory, she sought to be just. Doyen led her into the throne hall. It was vast, empty, and silent. The Emperor's throne, once a symbol of power, now seemed fragile and small. Mira's presence filled the room. She stood tall, her uniform scorched from previous battles, her eyes steady. A single message was broadcast to the galaxy from her and Doyen. "You wanted war," she said calmly. "You have it. But remember, humans do not start wars. We end them." The message spread quickly, reaching every system under Imperial control. Humans had not only defeated the Empire's forces, they had sent a warning. Betrayal had consequences. The galaxy began to understand that humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. Outside the palace, human soldiers secured the city. They moved carefully, protecting civilians and ensuring that chaos did not take root. Mira's orders were clear: justice, not revenge. They had the power to destroy, but they chose to be disciplined. Doyen watched as soldiers raised the human flag above the palace. "It is over," he said quietly. "The Empire has fallen." Mira looked out the windows at the burning city. She did not smile. Victory was not just about defeating the enemy. It was about learning, remembering, and preparing for the future. The Empire had been strong, but arrogance and betrayal had led to its downfall. Humans had acted not just with strength, but with wisdom. Her thoughts turned to the soldiers, engineers, and civilians who had contributed to the effort. Humanity had not fought as individuals, they had fought as one. The galaxy had underestimated them for centuries, and now they had learned the cost of that mistake. Mira turned to Doyen. "We must ensure that this never happens again. Humans cannot simply react, we must guide, protect, and lead. The galaxy must remember the cost of betrayal." Doyen nodded. "And they will remember. Every system will know the power and purpose of humanity." As the sun rose over Carnus Prime, the destruction from the battle was clear. Cities were ruined, fleets destroyed, and soldiers surrendered. But from the ruins, a new order was rising. Humans would not simply occupy the planet. They would establish a presence that would prevent future tyranny. Mira walked through the palace halls, observing the changes. Soldiers followed her silently, inspired by her calm authority. She saw the fear in the eyes of the Empire's remaining leaders, but also a strange respect. Humans had not killed recklessly, yet they had shown that betrayal carried consequences. Doyen joined her on the balcony overlooking the city. The stars were bright, and the first light of dawn touched the horizon. "Do you think they understand now?" he asked. Mira shook her head. "Some may never understand, but they will learn. Humanity does not forgive betrayal lightly, and we never forget." Below, the city stirred. Citizens began to rebuild. Soldiers enforced order, and the remnants of the Empire accepted that their reign had ended. Humans had proven their strength, their unity, and their justice. The galaxy had changed. Mira looked to the horizon and whispered to herself, "The Empire thought it could control the galaxy. It was wrong. Humans will protect what is just, and we will not be defeated." The stars above Carnus Prime shone brightly, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy knew the full power of humanity. They were patient, they were precise, and they were unstoppable. The fall of Carnus Prime was not just a victory, it was a warning. The galaxy had learned that humans would defend themselves, their people, and their justice with a force no one could ignore. And at the center of it all, General Han Mira stood tall, the symbol of a species awakened, a species that would never again be underestimated. The war had lasted 8 months. The galaxy had changed in that time. Systems that had once bowed to the Galactic Empire now looked to humanity with respect, awe, and fear. Planets that had been quiet for centuries were now bustling with activity, rebuilding under the protection of human fleets. Humans had won not just because of their weapons, but because of their intelligence, courage, and unity. Every soldier, engineer, and citizen had played a role. Humanity had proven itself as the most formidable species in the galaxy. General Han Mira stood on the command deck of the flagship Daihan. The ship had seen many battles, but now it was calm. The stars stretched endlessly before her. quiet after the storm of war. Mira's body had healed, though her chest bore faint scars as a reminder of the assassination attempt that had started this conflict. She had survived when so many thought it impossible. She had led her people through victory and chaos, and now she faced the responsibility of rebuilding a galaxy shaken to its core. Captain Lee Doyen stood beside her, eyes scanning reports from former Imperial territories. Most of the remaining Imperial leaders have surrendered, he said. They know the war is over. Mira nodded. They fought for centuries thinking humans were weak. They now understand our strength, but they must also learn that humanity fights for justice, not cruelty. They will rebuild under our guidance if necessary, but the galaxy must be fair and safe. Across the stars, the remaining Imperial fleets surrendered without a fight. Thousands of soldiers laid down their weapons. Cities that had been occupied were liberated. The humans had shown mercy where it was deserved, and their discipline had gained them allies in unexpected places. Some former Imperial colonies joined humanity willingly, seeing that strength was accompanied by fairness. Admiral Park Hyeron and Commander Kim Sora oversaw operations to secure the former Imperial systems. Both had fought bravely, but now their focus shifted to rebuilding, guiding and stabilizing the regions that had been under Imperial rule for centuries. Mira had taught them that victory was not just about defeating enemies, it was about creating peace that could last. In the new capital of the human-led Galactic Union, preparations began for a memorial to honor those who had fallen and those who had served. Mira's image was everywhere, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and justice. People whispered her name with reverence. She had survived an attempt on her life, led humanity through war, and ensured that the galaxy would never again underestimate her species. Even as humans celebrated, Mira and Doyen remained focused. There were lessons to be learned. The Empire had underestimated patience, intelligence, and unity. Humanity had responded with all three, combined with courage and strategy. Now it was time to ensure that these lessons were never forgotten. Mira walked through the corridors of the flagship, speaking to soldiers and officers. She encouraged them, reminded them of their duty, and praised their courage. "We did not fight for revenge," she said quietly. "We fought for justice. That is why we will be remembered. That is why humanity will be respected." Doyen followed her, watching the interactions. Soldiers looked to her not just as a leader, but as the heart of their species. Her calm authority inspired confidence, even in those who had faced the horrors of war for the first time. Mira's presence reminded everyone that humanity's true strength was not just in its technology or fleets, but in its people and in the courage to act when justice demanded it. In the newly liberated cities, human engineers and scientists began to repair damage. The galaxy had seen destruction, but humans had proven that they could rebuild faster, smarter, and stronger than anyone expected. Communication hubs were restored, trade routes reopened, and colonies stabilized. Humanity was not only victorious in war, but in governance, diplomacy, and reconstruction. Mira and Doyen traveled from system to system, meeting with former Imperial leaders, alien rulers, and human administrators. They emphasized the importance of fairness, unity, and respect. The humans had fought for justice, and now they were building it. Every decision they made, every system they helped rebuild, reinforced the lesson that humans would not be underestimated again. During one visit to a former Imperial capital, Mira stood before a large crowd of citizens and soldiers. She spoke quietly but firmly. "Peace must be guarded with strength. The galaxy has seen what happens when treaties are broken and trust is betrayed. Humanity will not start wars, but we will end them. Justice will always be our guide." Her words spread through communication networks, reaching every human and alien system. The message was clear. Betrayal had consequences, but humanity's strength could be used for protection, fairness, and the creation of lasting peace. Captain Doyen and Mira returned to Dahan, watching the stars as they traveled through systems that had once been under Imperial control. "Do you think the galaxy will ever forget what humans are capable of?" Doyen asked. Mira shook her head. "Some may forget, but they will remember the lessons. Humans have patience, courage, and intelligence. We act when we must. We fight when justice is broken. The galaxy has seen us at our full power. That memory will last for centuries." The memorial for those who had fallen was held on the human homeworld. A statue of General Han Mira was placed at the center, surrounded by flowers, candles, and plaques honoring soldiers from all human systems. Civilians, veterans, and leaders attended. Mira stood silently as the ceremony proceeded, not for recognition but to honor the unity and sacrifice that had made victory possible. Even as celebrations occurred, Mira and Doyun planned for the future. The galaxy was fragile, and humans now held a position of influence. They could not allow the mistakes of the past to repeat. Plans for alliances, trade networks, and mutual protection agreements were drafted. Humans had not only won a war, they were now shaping the future. In the quiet moments aboard Dihan, Mira reflected on the path that had brought humanity to this point. The assassination attempt, the betrayal, and the long months of war had tested every human virtue. Courage, patience, strategy, and unity had been proven stronger than fear, arrogance, or pride. Humans had endured, adapted, and triumphed. Doyen joined her, his expression calm. "We have changed the galaxy," he said softly. Mira looked out at the stars, thinking of every soldier, every engineer, every civilian who had contributed to the victory. "Yes," she replied, "but we must never forget. Peace must always be guarded. Justice must always be our guide. Humans will remain vigilant, not out of fear, but out of responsibility. That is what makes us strong." Months later, the last remnants of the Empire had been absorbed into the new Galactic Union. Former enemies and allies alike acknowledged humanity's leadership. Systems that had once feared human patience now respected it. Humanity had transformed from a species underestimated for centuries into the cornerstone of a new era. The statue of General Han Mira stood tall in the capital, a symbol not of war, but of resilience, justice, and unity. Her legacy was not measured in destruction, but in the courage and wisdom that had led humans through the darkest times and into the light. Doyen watched the sunset from the balcony of the new Galactic Union headquarters. "Do you think they understand what they have witnessed?" he asked quietly. Mira smiled faintly. "Some may never understand, but they will never forget. Humanity has shown its strength, its unity, and its justice. That memory will guide the galaxy for generations." The stars above gleamed with promise. The humans had faced betrayal, injustice, and war, and emerged stronger. They had honored their fallen, protected the innocent, and guided the galaxy toward a new era of respect and peace. Humanity was no longer a quiet species of diplomats and negotiators. They were the keepers of balance, respected and feared, and remembered as the species that had ended 900 years of peace not by choice, but by necessity. And in every corner of the galaxy, when people spoke of the day the Empire fell, they remembered one truth. When humanity was betrayed, it did not falter. It rose, it fought, and it endured. And at the center of that force, General Han Mira's spirit remained, a symbol of the courage, intelligence, and justice that defined humans forever. The galaxy had changed, and humans would never again be underestimated.